you may not know like A, B, and C of whatever's on the job description, but as long as you are willing to learn and are able to be patient with yourself during that learning process, then you can pretty much do whatever you want in life.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Have a Map podcast. My name is Ariana Smith, and I am your host for this week's episode. I am here with Marisol, and I am also here with Janelle Abad. So I'm going to let them both introduce themselves, and then I'm going to kick it off to Marisol to start questions.
Hi, everybody. My name is Janelle Abad, and I am the art director at Polyvinyl Records, which is an indie rock label based in Champaign, Illinois, but I currently work out of Austin, Texas right now.
Hey, I'm Marisol Corral, and currently I am a senior majoring in marketing at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, and I'm also a dog mom to Chihuahua. So yeah, we are so excited to have you today. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Definitely a question we would love to start off with is currently, what do you feel is your current impact on the world?
Wow, my impact on the world, it feels really small right now, but you always hope that it can trickle down. But my hope is to just create a more inclusive and a safe space for musicians and artists within the music community. Right now, that's kind of tied to just the indie music community, which feels so small, but one step at a time.
Yeah, I was actually going to piggyback off of Marisol's question and kind of ask, like, what are you doing right now to, like, hopefully work towards that goal, or how you want to be remembered?
I try my best. Like, I'm very much in the mindset that the youth are like the just smartest people in the world right now. So I'm just trying to do whatever I can to, give them a platform and guide their way through. Because like being a student or a kid, teenager, whatever, finding your way through the music industry is really difficult. There's not like a one specific roadmap that you can follow. Roadmap. Plug that you can follow, it to get you to a certain place. And there's not really like a dedicated. I mean, there are some that are out there, like the Berklee College of Music, and there's very few music business oriented, degrees. But so yeah, I'm just trying to make that information more accessible to folks, especially young women of color, for sure.
I think that's very interesting, and just hearing about it, because it can be hard going into the music industry. And definitely love hearing how, like, even though you may think it might be a little impact you have, like, to someone else, it really couldn't mean the world. So definitely would love to hear more about, like, so how you even got there, like already like here at Polyvinyl Records. So definitely would love to hear about maybe like where you come from, a little bit where your family comes from.
Yeah, so my family, I'm first generation. My parents are both from the Philippines. They actually moved to Canada before they moved to the US. So it was kind of like a 1-2 punch kind of deal. But yeah, they're from the Philippines. I'm the first out of our family to get a degree in the States and go through the education process. So I grew up in Houston, in a suburb of Houston called Katy, and it's kind of more of like a well-off area, but my family wasn't part of that. So I kind of grew up like seeing everyone around me, benefit from having, wealthy parents. And, although my parents did as much as they could, like money is at the end of the day is such a huge factor to, what stuff you have access to. So yeah, grew up in Houston, and then I ended up going to college at Texas State University. And there, my sophomore year of college, I joined the college radio station, KTSW, and I ended up going to Texas State just because of proximity. Like it was 30 minutes away from Austin, and then so in my head I was like, oh, I can get to go to like South by Southwest and like all these things that we didn't necessarily have an abundance of in Houston, right? So I ended up going there. I found the radio station as a whim. I kind of already knew that I wanted to work in music. In high school, I spent my first 2 years really into volleyball. Like I was like, I'm gonna like go to college and like be a volleyball star. And then, life happens. You don't end up making the team. Um, and so I pivoted to my love for the orchestra program there, which is actually like one of the best programs in the state. And I'm super, super fortunate that I was able to be a part of that. So that's how I kind of knew that music was my gateway essentially to my career. So when I was in college, I was basically looking for anything that I could do within the music industry. And one of the things that I saw at Texas State was that sometimes they send out teams to South by Southwest to cover it and like all this more journalistic kind of stuff. So I was like, okay, that's my gateway into like going to all these concerts basically and surrounding myself with all these like really cool music people. So then I staked my way into the college radio station there. I quickly became the music director there for a couple years, and I loved every second of it. I cannot state enough how beneficial that was for me in my career. So yeah, I was there for a couple years, and then while I was doing school and everything, of course, started doing some internships. I started an internship at Glassnote Records, which is home to Phoenix, Tudor Cinema Club, churches, more like mainstream pop bands like that. Did that for I think about a year. I was doing some radio promotion, so I was going through this database called Mediabase and like going through reports and stuff and doing more like technical things like that. And then I eventually moved on from that and landed an internship at Dangerbird Records, which was kind of my path into the more indie realm. And they're home to Silver Sun Pickups, Sloth Rest, some other bands like that. And I think it was actually like under a year. I guess they just really liked me, and I became really good friends with my peer there, Francie. And she helped me get promoted to a marketing assistant position, which was part time. So I was doing that for a little bit, and then on the side, I was doing what's called Favor here. It's like food delivery, like Uber Eats kind of stuff. But then, after a while, when you do part time, like it's not sustainable, right? So I was looking for a full time gig, and I saw this full time gig based in Champaign, Illinois, for where I am at now, Polyvinyl Records. And that position was called the digital asset creator. And so I was like, okay, well, I I have this experience. Like I did some kind of graphic design work for the radio station, and then I was also like helping out my friend's band do some stuff around town. And I was making show flyers and like little Facebook banners and stuff. So like, okay, like I could give this a shot. I love being creative. I'm not formally trained in design in any way, but I'm really good at solving problems and looking stuff up on YouTube, basically. Yeah, they hired me, and then a couple years later, they had an art director position open up, and they chose me. So that's how I got to where I am now.
No, yeah, you definitely have like such an amazing resume, of course. Definitely love hearing like how you're able to take, I learned something from here, even though I may not have necessarily like all like or what like some people that have like preferred qualifications,
Right.
like I know what one thing Mo always says is all you have is all you need. So I think that's really like something that sticks to me, of course, because like even though like someone might have a completely different resume than you, you're like, what, I am my own individual, and I got this. As long as I got motivation, perseverance, like nothing's gonna knock me down. I'm still gonna try my best. I don't know this. You know what? Like you said, I'm gonna look on YouTube. I'm gonna learn how to do this. So yeah, I think having that motivation is really amazing to hear that.
That's definitely one piece of advice I give to anyone whenever, they're applying to a job is, like make sure that they know that you may not know like A, B, and C of whatever's on the job description. But as long as you are willing to learn and are able to be patient with yourself during that learning process, then you can pretty much do whatever you want in life.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like your story is kind of like, because I'm a big believer on like everything happens for a reason. And so
Totally.
every job, everywhere you've been has led you to where you are. And so I think that's a great takeaway for people to realize too, is that, no matter where you are, you're going through that process for a reason to take you somewhere even better. And I feel like your story is like a prime example of that, because you've done all this stuff and it's led you to where you are now. Which also brings me to a little question, is like, how did you stay motivated through all of that? I know like with any career, sometimes you can be
Totally.
discouraged. So
Yeah.
like, how did you navigate through that?
Oh, that's hard. I mean, it was really hard. Like, I look back at like all the things that I was juggling in college, and I'm like, I don't know if I could do that again, to be honest. But I think I was really I was really self-motivated, and of course, like I had a bunch of friends cheering me on and everything. But I think I really, when things got tough, I really just kept reminding myself, like, what my dreams and goals were when I was like 15 years old, 12 years old, going to my first show, and just like remembering that feeling, and trying to just bring myself back to that mindset of like, okay, 12-year-old me right now, even though I'm an intern, like in like just plugging in numbers, like it's still really cool, So yeah, I mean, it's hard, right? Like you can get in your head so much, and there's, the whole burnout thing, which I definitely experienced, but I think I was just so hungry and so eager for more all the time, and that drive never really stopped for me.
So how did you know like music was something you really wanted to do, and like was it something maybe like in your childhood or like say during high school that you know what, like this is something I'm really like interested in, you know?
Well, my mom was really the one that pushed me to discover and explore like music, really. I think in the Filipino culture, I'm Filipino, by the way, um, there's a lot of karaoke, and like it seems like every Filipino person that I know is like an amazing singer. So like at Filipino parties, like karaoke is always getting busted out, and in Filipino parties sometimes like there'll be like cute little performances, whether it's like dance or like singing. So my thing was always singing and like doing these covers of stuff. And there was a point in high school where I was doing the whole YouTube thing, right? So I was making content for myself, and that's kind of how I like got into, loving, making content and everything. But yeah, I mean, music, I think, definitely came from my mom, and I guess the friends that I was around, I had a lot of really good friends that were really into just like the nitty gritty of what music is, and what the lifestyle of like rock bands and like shows and everything. So that definitely helps. And I was also like a part of orchestra since I was in middle school. So I was also doing music in that way. And when I was in high school, our high school program, orchestra program, actually had a leadership team. And that was really, really cool. And that really pushed me to discover this like leadership part of myself as a teenager. Um, so yeah, I ended up being the president of the orchestra in high school, and that really gave me insight as to like how to structure things, within teams and like more project management type of stuff. So yeah, music has always been around in my life and has always been like the constant for me. So yeah.
So I know a question that I have for you was, over these past few days, like, how would you use, like, what song or artist or album would you use to describe these last few days?
That is a good question. These last few days, well, if I have to plug a little bit, but I mean, genuinely, like, she is one of my favorite artists, despite me working for her. But her name is Ella Williams, but she goes by Squirrel Flower is her like moniker of her solo project. But she has an album coming out tomorrow, so I've been jamming that for the last few weeks, of course, getting myself hyped for that. Beautiful record called Planet I that we did some amazing work for. So I'm listening to that. Um, what else have I been listening to? I listen to a lot of, especially when I'm working, just more of like a droning kind of sound, and it's kind of odd because it's more like upbeat. But I listen to a lot of dance or pop music. So I've been really loving DOS lately, DOSS. She's this really cool producer from New York, I believe. She put out an EP earlier this year that was four amazing songs. It's just like boom, 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 and I'm just here like on Premiere Pro, like yeah, just trying to like chug through the workday.
Yeah, that's awesome. Definitely love a good like music to just get you going. That's really just all
Yeah.
you need, especially through the week. You're like, yes, hey, it is Monday. Hey,
Mhm.
hey, hey, hey.
And it's such a mood booster too. Like sometimes, especially during the beginning of the pandemic, when that pandemic depression hit, I could not listen to anything that was sad. It would just bum me out, put me in a bad mood. Um, so it was a lot of like pop music, like Carly Rae Jepsen, Lady Gaga, Charlie XCX. Yeah, me alone in my apartment. I'm sure my neighbors are like, "What is going on down there?"
Definitely speaking about the pandemic, how was it transitioning from what you usually would do, like, where you were working or, versus like now, like kind of like everyone's kind of like having their distance and working from home.
Mhm.
So how was it like from first working kind of in your own environment and now to like a completely different environment?
It's actually funny because I started the pandemic in Champaign, Illinois, where our headquarters are. And even prior to the pandemic, like we had made plans to move to Texas, my coworker and I, because we're both originally from here, just to be with family and friends and all that. But yeah, when the pandemic hit, I remember it was the day before South by Southwest was about to happen, and we had just confirmed everything for a showcase for South by, and we had like announced it, and we had like the best artwork we've ever had, the best lineup we've ever had, and of course like that happened, and it was really just like a huge bummer, I think, all around for the music industry, and obviously like everyone else in the world. But yeah, so we obviously like made the switch to work from home. I had just moved to Champaign a couple years prior, and I, didn't really have that many friends. I was living alone for the first time in my life, which was a blessing, of course. But I think during the pandemic, it really started to spiral for me. Being in a small apartment, just like pacing around, not having anyone in person to really bounce things off of, and even if it's not even like work stuff, but also like a lot of my coworkers are my really good friends, so like I kind of lost that connection too. um but yeah, and then I kind of just stuck through it through the summer, and then in August I had to like finish out my lease before I could move to Texas. But yeah, and then August I moved in with my partner in Texas, worked from home a little bit there, and that was, I think, really what turned it around for me, was just like being able to be face to face with someone again on a regular basis. So that definitely was so much better. Um, for me mentally. And then we ended up getting a dog because I knew I was going to be working from home for a while. And that was just like, he's the joy of my life. Anyone that knows me will tell you the first thing about me is that I love my dog. Um, but yeah, and then we always kind of had, even before the pandemic, we had the plan to move to Texas, open up a Texas-based office, find some friends around here, music friends that would be down to split an office with us. Um, but then once we moved, because everything was like, okay, we'll wait for a vaccine, we'll wait for a vaccine, we'll wait for a vaccine. So everything kind of kept getting pushed until, oh, was it May, I think, of this year? Um, all of us finally got vaccinated. We ended up partnering with an Austin-based label called Keeled Scales. So we now all share an office. As you can see, it's kind of barren right now. We still have a lot more like posters and art to hang up, but yeah, we ended up moving into this really cool space on the east side of Austin. Ultimately, for me, working in an office and having that separation from home was really important. And I'm super lucky that I had bosses that recognized that and were willing to trust us to open up our own office. So now that we have our own office open, I am just like 1,000 times more productive. It's been really, really nice. And I'm, yeah, very fortunate for that. But yeah, during the pandemic, it was not fun. Not fun.
Definitely. I know how you mentioned that, like listening to music kind of like kept you like, going throughout the pandemic. Was there anything else you did to kind of like keep you motivated as well?
Um, was there anything? I would like to say yes, but honestly, honestly, not really. I think the home and the work separation for me was really, really hard. So I'd end up working like till nighttime, but I think with being in the office and having a longer commute, I can actually like turn off my computer and I'll just leave it on all day. But other things that got me through, I guess the one thing was when we got my dog, like that was just so wonderful and great. And just trying my best to keep in touch with friends as much as I could and getting on the phone with people. And yeah, I think that's about it. Listening to music, dancing. Yeah.
If I could ask a question, I know since I am a dancer and I'm like kind of like in the dance scene and stuff, like with that type of artistry, I noticed like a lot of like artists are always so open-minded and just great overall people. And I was wondering if like if you notice that like in the music industry or people artists around you, like is it like a really like open-minded environment? Like what type of environment is it?
Specifically in the I can only really speak for the indie music scene, DIY music scene. But I mean, yeah, they all of us are just really open-minded and accepting of each other. And um, the indie music scene is pretty tight knit, and as much as we like to think it's really big, it's actually really small. Everyone knows each other, and I think there's a really good support system with all the different artists around us. um, I think part of that is understanding that we all know each other, and we all have a mutual understanding of the struggles of running an indie record label. And so that's something that I think really attracted me to Polyvinyl, was that Polyvinyl really stood for people first, and then industry second. That's part of our business model, is that we're a 50 split record label, which is typical for most indie record labels. But if you go further into the more like top 20 pop kind of realm, sometimes the labels will get more than the artists. And the way we approach that is, we're essentially like partners with our artists. Like, we're business partners. We're not like looming over you in any way. Like, we're here to help you, support you however your vision may be. We're here to give you guidance, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely kind of like going back to like your career in school. Like there was something that I really caught my attention. I saw that you organized like a talent showcase, a music fest called Play Like a Girl. So I definitely wanted to hear more about like how was it like kind of just setting that up. So
Yeah, that was awesome. I don't even remember how that came about. I think just for me, like, International Women's Day is like Christmas. Like, I just love texting all my friends being like, "You rule! Like, you're a badass!" Like, everyone, like, you know. And I was music director at the time, and I made sure that this was like separate from being affiliated with the radio station, because I really wanted to make it my own thing and make sure it was like 100% woman led and organized. And I had a lot of really amazing women identifying peers around me that were really awesome at like organizing and like coordinating things with people, and I felt so inspired by them. And I've worked with them in previous projects before, and I was like, I need to recruit these two people for this to help me with this, because if we all like the thought process was like, if we all combine like our powers and our talents, basically, like we can do something really, really cool for the community. So yeah, my friend Hannah Bennett, I think she is doing like event planning now, which like totally makes sense. And Andrea, she is in New York now doing PR for film, the film industry. And so I was just really inspired by them, and I was like, hey, like I have these bands in mind. Would you help me, get this coordinated? Like I'll handle all the artwork, the communication with the bands, like, contact the venue to make sure we can book that venue. And then, yeah, we basically came together. I think it was a few times the month before to like plan everything out. We made sure we had all the assets and everything that we needed, Facebook group, emails to send to bands to make sure that they're ready for the day. It was really, really just magical, I think, getting to work with these two women, and then, standing there in the room and seeing all these female musicians perform and do their thing. And like we also had little vendors that were businesses owned by women, and just to see all this like powerful like female energy in the room, I was like, yes, like this is what we need. Like this is more of what um, the community that I want to represent and like lift up into the world.
Yeah, that's honestly amazing. Just especially like just being able is empowering women in general is definitely great, and how you're able to just take one idea and then just be able to just showcase it to the world in a sense. So I think that's definitely awesome.
Yes, I agree with Marisol. And I have a question for you. So like, have you noticed like differences between men and women like in the music industry? Like, do women face, different disparities? Like how is that?
Totally, I 1000% think so. I mean, there's the obvious things like in the music industry, like it really is like male dominated. If you look at all the execs in the music industry as a whole, um, they're all run by men, with women below them. And so I think sometimes it can get hard as a woman to speak up for yourself, bringing up things that are going wrong, but having the courage to do that, like it takes a lot. um, and there have definitely been times where, something has happened to me and I'm just like, okay, well, I'm a young, 19-year-old as an intern, like you know I don't really have a voice in this company. But at the end of the day, we all need to be represented, and feel like you're able to have a voice wherever you are. And I think that's super important. And yeah, I mean, definitely something I've experienced. You know, I've been to shows where, people have touched me where they're not supposed to touch me. And I'm very, I'm, I used to be, at least. I haven't been to a show in however knows who long, whoever knows how long. But, I'm very much like a, hey, don't do that kind of person. Like, I will speak up for myself in that way. And it took me a long time to do that, um, but I think for me, it's just like I just got tired of it. And my mom is someone that has always told me, like, if someone's treating you a bad way, you need to tell them. Like if someone's disrespecting you, you need to be upfront with them. It's it's you that comes first in those kinds of situations. Because if it were a man doing those kinds of things, like, there would be no repercussions, right? And then of course, like, the act of actually having that conversation with someone can be, with a man, especially an older man, can be pretty demoralizing. It can feel like you don't have a voice, or like, you're too emotional, or you're too this and that, you're looking too into it. Oh, you're just heated right now, cool down. um, I think women's emotions can definitely be taken advantage of and not being taken seriously. And I guess that goes for whatever, outside of the music industry too, So, yeah, I definitely see it. And which is why I'm very passionate about, uplifting young women in whatever they do.
No, yeah, definitely. Another question I have is like, so like, we are in have a map, and people my age, sometimes I don't even know what the hell I'm doing, just like going to college,
Mhm.
like, what's next? So I definitely want to know, like, is this like the path you always knew you kind of wanted to go through? Like how was it? Like just kind of like going into like where you're at now. You're like, oh my God, like okay, like I just got to go here or here, or like how was that for you? Like,
It's interesting because I started out, when I was doing the whole radio music director thing, I was like, definitely working in radio. I don't care if it's a dying art, I'm working in it. But then, I I tried it out, and I think if I had stayed in radio, that I would have done a wonderful job no matter what. But I I'm really glad that life took me where it did and led me down a more creative path. Um, and I'm not sure I always pictured myself as an art director. I I think when I was y'all's age, I was probably more in the mindset of like, I'm gonna be like a radio, like work in radio for this record label. I always knew that I wanted to work for a record label or like be in music in some way, but in terms of like the niche like path I wanted to take, I think I kind of just let whatever was out there lead me, and in faith that it would be good and I'd find my way eventually. It might not be like as soon as I wanted it to be, um, but I always believed in myself, in knowing that no matter what steps I would take, it would I always made sure that it would be a step forward and not really a step back. Like I said before, like as long as you have that mindset of like, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'll learn, I'm able to learn. Um, I just let that kind of like lead me through where life ended up taking me.
I thought it was really interesting too how you mentioned like how you moved from one place to another not knowing anyone. And I know for myself, my second year I transferred and like I knew basically no one. So it definitely can be hard, like kind of putting yourself out there. And yeah, like when I did, like I went to a like meet the Greeks, and I already knew like I wanted to be in a like say fraternity sorority, because I was looking at a co-ed fraternity. And I know
Hmm.
like this guy, he was like, hola, hablas español? I'm like, oh, see, like, you speak Spanish? I'm like, yeah, like, that was like my first interaction. So like now, like, I got to pledge, and like I know all these people, and I think because of them, like I was able to grow that much more as well. So I think kind of how you mentioned, like you just got to put yourself out there.
Totally. Yeah, and practice makes perfect too. Like I one of the jobs that of being a music director is uh, calling promote radio promoters and telling them what you're spinning. And a lot of that includes like small talk, of course, because you want to build, relationships and what have you. But I used to be terrified of picking up the phone, like absolutely terrified. But once like I had to do it, so it was really awkward and rocky at first, but yeah, definitely found my voice. And yeah, and I remember in college, like my first few days, I didn't really, talk to anyone. I'm naturally a very introverted person. Like a lot of my energy gets spent talking to people, but when I'm in it, I love it. Um, but yeah, it took a little bit for sure. But I feel like once you get more comfortable in your surroundings, and I think start grounding yourself first, it's easier to branch yourself out and try to make new friends.
So like, how is it kind of like being an art director now? Like, is it like how different is it like from first being an intern to like now like the things you're doing being an art director?
Oh, it's so different. It's so different. When I was in it, when I was doing, I guess before I started working at Polyvinyl, I was really only doing radio stuff, so I wasn't really working like with the design team. So there was a pretty big learning curve, I think, in how to structure that. And when I first joined Polyvinyl, there wasn't really a structure for that at the time. It was really only just one guy at the time that was doing all the art stuff. Um, so we worked together and like kind of tried to adapt more of the system, and that was a lot of what bringing me on as an art director. That was one of like my boss's main goals with bringing me on was um, to structure it, because there was no structure really before. It was just one guy with a to-do list. So a lot of my day is actually not creating anymore, which is fine. It has its ups and downsides, but a lot of it is like project managing, making sure that files are in order. We have all the files that we need. Everything's ready to go to print. Um, Communicating with artists and management. Whereas when I first started at Polyvinyl, I was just making a banner for Instagram or for the website. I was also doing photography at the time, their product photos. So I was just really kind of working in my own little like bubble in Photoshop. But now I have such a more, I guess, a bigger awareness of what's going on within the label. Especially creatively, I try to dig in a little bit more into the process of the conception of the actual like physical artworks, like physical LPs and stuff. So sometimes I'll get different bands and artists connected with designers that I've worked with before that I really like, or they'll come to me with a designer that they have in mind. Usually that conversation starts once our label director gets word that we're going to have we call them masters, but they're the audio mastered files, the stuff that you're going to hear on Spotify, etc. So once we know we're going to have those soon, my boss contacts me and is like, hey, let's get this artwork conversation started. Usually our timeline is like we have to get the master delivered and the artwork delivered at the same time, because those go to the vinyl plant at the same time, to get test pressings made, which is what gets sent to us. So we make sure that there's no pops and stuff in the vinyl. So yeah, a lot of it is like more timeline based, deadline based. Since I started, we were a team of 3, and then 2 of those folks left, and then so it was just me kind of running shit for a little bit, which was really hard, but we made it through. And then now I have an assistant that helps me with the day-to-day stuff, which is really great. And I really love, I think, like I said, like helping young people like do what they want to do, and try to just give as much knowledge as I can. So it's been really big transition, and I'm really surprised that it came this early in my career. So yeah.
A question I definitely have is like, say all the stuff you've learned so far and that you do, like, would you say you kind of learned that through school or more like kind of like on the job? Like,
I would definitely say on the job. um, yeah, a lot of indie rock I feel like is learning as you go. And I feel like there are 2 tenets of like working in the indie music industry. And the first one is you have to learn everything as you go, basically, or like learn from people around you. And the second thing is to always be adaptable, because music is like everything is always changing all the time. Like the whole how all of like Spotify and Apple Music kind of came into the picture in the last 20 years. The how vinyl has had a weird resurgence, and also how vinyl is not being able to get manufactured right now. So we always have to kind of be on our toes and get creative on the fly with certain things like that.
thank you so much for like just like all the insights.
Yeah, thank you so much for like joining us. We loved having you. Do we have any little closing remarks you want to leave before we we end?
I just want to say thank y'all for being here. And like I said, like it's so great to be in a room, Zoom room, with two other incredible women. And I wish you both the absolute best in life, and we should keep in touch for sure.